Hello and welcome. My name is Tom. This is The Enthusiasm Project, Season 3, Episode 4, and today we're going to dive into the world of ethics, specifically on YouTube, but in a way that's also relevant for any kind of online content creation, podcasts, etc., those kinds of things. And this actually builds on a conversation that I had with myself back in Season 2, Episode 18. So there was an episode called When the Things You Create Are No Longer Yours. And in that episode, I kind of went over what happens as you build something online and it begins to grow, which is a great thing. But as it begins to grow and you get attention from other people, it can feel like people want to have their hands in the thing that you made. It's like, you know, you have cooked this delicious meal and now everyone wants to grab their handful of it. And that can be a good thing if the partnerships are genuine and authentic and great, but it can also be a detrimental thing. And if you spread yourself too thin or you're not selective enough in who you choose to partner with, you can very easily lose the feeling of control or the actual control over the thing that you created. And one of the ways to counteract that is to essentially create for yourself an ethics statement and a code that you want to go by and make that available and make that public. And in that episode, I had talked about listening to an episode of the MKBHD podcast called Waveform, where he and a tech reviewer named Mr. Mobile were sort of talking about this area, and obviously they have giant audiences and huge channels and stuff like that. And they were talking about the need for ethics statements, and I was kind of digging through it. And since then, I don't know if it's that thing that if there's actually more of them popping up, you know, maybe these two high-profile creators talking about this thing made it more relevant, you know, put it in my mind, maybe put it in other people's mind, or if it's just that thing where once you start paying attention to stuff, you see it more, even though it was there the whole time. But I've noticed a lot of the people I admire online do have ethics statements, and that episode was from a few months ago. And I'm happy I didn't rush this. I spent a good, 5 or 6 weeks really coming up with an ethics statement that works for me, that I would be proud of. And so I wanted to run through that today on this episode, just to kind of give you an idea, one, of where I'm coming from, so you sort of maybe understand that a little better, but also maybe in a way that's going to help you if you're somebody sort of in that world of navigating, taking something you're creating, and whether it's a hobby or you're really trying to make it your full-time thing, monetizing it, but trying to maintain authenticity, keep things transparent and above board, and, you know, grow your thing that you're making while also not jeopardizing the relationship you have built with your audience along the way. So that's our main topic of discussion today. I'm actually really excited to get into it because I'm very proud of the ethics statement that I put together. I don't know why, but I just am. Before that, though, I do want to jump in because we're talking about this ethics statement is something that I'll totally put links to mine and you can copy and paste. You feel free to borrow. But I think the important thing is to make something like this that works for you specifically. I definitely couldn't just copy and paste somebody else's. I could look at what other people I admire are doing and kind of see okay, this is, they might have thought of something I wouldn't think about yet. And I'll kind of get to that when we go through it. And so borrowing an idea here or there is one thing, but you don't want to just copy and paste it. Here's my slick transition. The same is true for gear because it's easy to talk about gear. And last week I talked about gear actually mattering. And, there's the cliche of gear doesn't matter, story is king, but there is a certain extent, a pretty big extent really, where your gear does matter and is an important thing to helping you grow. And with that in mind, I wanted to highlight a voice message that I was lucky enough to receive for this episode. So this is a 2-part message because he went a little long. So it's about 1.5 minutes and it's split into 2 parts. It's from Keng of the World, spelled Keng of the World. He's got a YouTube channel, also a podcast here on Anchor. He sent a message responding to the idea about gear, and I think it's very eloquent. and it's very relevant. So I wanted to make sure before we dive in too far and get too away from this, I wanted to highlight this and sort of respond to it. So here we go from Keng of the World.
Hey, Tom. My name is Keng from the Keng of the World YouTube channel as well as podcast, also here at Anchor.fm. And I agree with you on your latest podcast. Gear does matter, but it is always relative. The debate on whether gear matters, I think, is premised on having either the cheapest gear or the latest and greatest gear. I think a lot of people tend to associate gear as being the newest ones available, which is most of the time expensive, and forget gear that is in the middle of the pack, so to speak. Like, for instance, I love the Rodecaster Pro based on yours and Curtis Judd's review. But at $600 plus taxes and shipping to the Philippines, I'm looking at around $700 or more. So instead, I opted for the Zoom LiveTrack L8. There is a steeper learning curve, but since I know that I am patient enough to learn the ins and outs of the hardware. Okay, so my last message was cut, so I'm just going to continue it here. Anyway, like I said, there is a steeper learning curve, but since I know that I am patient enough to learn the ins and outs of the hardware, I decided to get the Zoom LiveTrack L8. Now, I still would like to have a Rodecaster down the line, but the Zoom is giving me all the things that I want as far as podcasting and YouTube is concerned. Well, those are my thoughts. I'm actually recording this on the Zoom LiveTrack L8. Anyway, love your YouTube channel and podcast. All the best to you and your new wife. Cheers.
Thank you so much for that message. That was really nice. I did pass along your regards to Heather. But I think that you brought up an awesome point. And first, I do want to say the audio quality is terrific on that. So whatever you're doing with the Zoom L8 just sounds awesome. And that's a great piece of gear. Essentially, Rode came out with the Rodecaster, and then Zoom sort of tried to take some of that functionality and put it into a smaller, less expensive, their version of that. So still an awesome tool. But I think there's some important things here to kind of continue our gear discussion, which is that new isn't always best. And I agree with that. New is definitely enticing. But if you get a piece of gear and it does something, just because the next thing comes out doesn't mean that the thing you bought doesn't do what you originally bought it for. If you have a computer and a new one comes out, doesn't mean that makes your computer slower. Maybe slower by comparison, but it's still going to work the same way that it worked for you. I think about the Rodecaster a lot because I use it and I love it so much. Eventually, I'm guessing Rode is going to come out with a version 2. And I keep thinking, well, what would I want to add? I wouldn't really change anything, but I'm sure when they come out with it, it's going to look a little different. It's going to have some features, and I'm going to feel like, I wish I had that one. But really, clearly the one that I've got is more than I need, and it's more than enough, and that's not going to change no matter what comes out in the future. So newer isn't necessarily always better, even though it can be tantalizing. And then you also brought up the idea of the middle of the pack, which last week when I talked about the Canon R5 and all that sort of stuff, I mentioned going, for the higher end gear, but typically I also do kind of go for the middle thing. When I buy a computer, I don't buy the low end one, but I also don't buy the high end one, usually right down the middle. I find that that's the best balance of value versus functionality. And, it's often also the least exciting of the options because it's just the middle, but it is the one that tends to work the best for me. So I think that was very accurate. And really it comes down to, an honest assessment of what your personal needs are. Do you need a giant mixer with all these things, or do you just need a small $100 audio recorder to do one thing? What do you need to do the job that needs to get done? And then learn that gear the best that you can, because what I was thinking about was my high school students and even myself back in high school, and maybe you can relate to this too, but you have very little budget in high school. And so I've seen students, they check out stuff for my program, but if they get their own thing, if they have a camera or a piece of gear, they don't get the new one every year. They don't get, all the accessories. They get their one thing and they have to learn everything about it. So even if it's a Canon Rebel, the least expensive Canon camera, Canon DSLR that there is, that's the camera that they have. And they'll learn everything about it and oftentimes be able to get better results from that. And I remember, being in high school and I was obviously still into cameras and stuff, but I was also into music. And I remember looking at pictures online of people with their home studios that had like racks and racks of synthesizers and recording gear and all this stuff. And I had like, my little like Casio keyboard and I don't even remember what I used to record audio with. I think it's some like bootleg software or something on my computer. But I learned, I feel like I knew that gear almost better than a lot of the gear that I own now because it was all that I had. I had no choice but to get the most I possibly could out of that Casio keyboard. And I think it was Cakewalk was the software I was using. And whatever software I was using, I had to learn everything about it. And I became so much more proficient at it because of that. And that is something too, where if you're not just constantly getting the next new thing, you have time to really get to know your tools. And that means you have time to get better and more proficient with your tools. But that also, again, comes down to actually deciding what you need. Do you need the biggest, do you need 8K capabilities in your camera, or do you just need a camera with good autofocus? Like, those are going to change the options that are available to you. Do you need the Rodecaster Pro that has 4 XLR tracks and USB calling and phone this and that and all the things, or do you just need something that you can plug an XLR mic into and get a good quality recording? Do you just need a USB mic that's going to work and get you started and sounding great? Whatever your needs are, those are the things you want to pay attention to the most. And that brings us right again to the ethics statement. So back to the main topic of today's episode. As I said before, you don't want to just copy and paste somebody else's. If you just Google, I don't know, let me see. I'm gonna Google this right now. I'll type in YouTube ethics statement and just see what pops up here. I misspelled statement, but Google is smart. There are all kinds of different channels that pop up with ethics statement and my statement of ethics. I'm sure that they all have similarities, but I don't think it would be wise to just go like, yeah, I'll just do that, copy paste. And for example, the Mr. Mobile one that I looked at originally, which was like one of the first ones I saw, his is really long and it covers like every possible scenario. How he handles getting comped for travel and hotel stays from companies, how he handles stuff on different platforms, how like those are some things I don't even need to address in mine. So sure, I could do that if I wanted to, but it's not even relevant necessarily to me. So I broke my stuff down to what matters to me, and this is basically where I'm at. So I'll put a link to this in the show notes for this episode, but if you go to enthusiasmproject.com, right at the very top, I made it super prominent. I put a page that's just ethics. And so you can click on it and the ethics statement is there. That is the key thing. If we're talking about ethics, the idea of what is, I guess, right and wrong, ethical, making it transparent and available to everyone, I think is really important. It's not something I just want to keep private for me. It's not something I would just want to share with a potential like partner or business venture. It's something I want everyone to be able to see. So if you're just someone who watches and listens to my stuff, if you're somebody who wants to like work together, I want everybody to be on the same page so that everybody knows where I'm coming from. And I would really recommend just making it open, transparent, and public. And so if you go to that page, I did a little intro and I basically say, I'm giggling because I'm sadly proud of this. You can't spell the Enthusiasm Project without integrity. Well, you can, but that's not the point. The real point is that integrity is integral to what I do. You know how proud I was of that sentence? The Enthusiasm Project isn't the largest YouTube channel on the platform by any means, but I truly value the relationship I've built with my audience over the past few years and hundreds of videos. Sponsored content is extremely rare on my channel. If I choose to work with a company on a sponsorship, it will always be because I actually use the product or service myself and genuinely trust the company to provide excellent customer service and support. More importantly, I will always make it abundantly clear that such content is sponsored. There's a couple of things I'd like to unpack there. The first being the fact that my channel isn't the largest. It can feel strange when somebody goes like, hey, we want to do a partnership with your channel. And then you're like, you almost feel like a diva to go like, here's my writer. This is all my requirements to work with me. And it's like, I know that you're also probably sending this out to people with, 50 times the audience that I have, but I don't care because it's still important to me to do things right. And I really, truly do value the audience that I built up. And just like we said in the past episode of talking about things you create no longer belonging to you, even a decent paycheck, like, say $5,000, $10,000 maybe for some crazy deal. Not that I've ever gotten anything that's close to $10,000, but or offered anything close to that. But something like that sounds great. However, if you really think, okay, you have spent years putting in countless hours, putting in your 10,000 hours to become an expert at what you do and building this relationship with an audience who trusts you, and there's, some kind of connection there that actually exists for real. Do you really want to just sell that out for a few $1,000s, or worse, even a few $100s? How do you want to handle that, and how do you want to value it? So if you look at it as a one-time paycheck versus how it's working within the value of the thing that you're creating, it kind of changes that perspective a little bit. And that's why I just upfront wanted to emphasize that sponsored content is extremely rare. It's practically non-existent. I've done one officially sponsored video ever, and every once in a while I might include something if somebody sends me stuff for free. The biggest thing I can think of is like Polar Pro has sent me quite a few filters over the past few years. They never ask for anything in return. They don't even ask for me to make a video about them. They just send them to me, and then because I like them and I use them, I make videos about them because it's interesting and I like to be able to test them out and stuff. And I tell people, of course, this was provided for free, but that's really it. So this is kind of setting up to prepare, because typically though, even though I don't do sponsored content very often, or at this point hardly ever, I get the offers to do it constantly, like several times a day. And so, and from, everybody from the shadiest company you can think of all the way up to reputable companies that I'd want to work with. And we'll kind of go to that in a second too. But I also wanted to make sure here in the line where it says companies, obviously products and services that I actually use. I don't want to, if I were to do something sponsored, I wouldn't want to say like, hey, here's a service or a product. It's great. I've like never played it or used it or whatever. And I was thinking played it because so many people do games in their sponsored segments, and it's like, they're not sitting there actually playing that game. They're just getting paid a lot of money to talk about it. Anyway, I want to do stuff that I actually genuinely trust to provide customer service and support. So Rode has never sponsored me, but they're a company that I'm totally cool recommending their products, because I know if somebody has an issue with it, they can reach out to Rode's customer service and they're going to get great support no matter what. Like no matter how long they've had it, no matter what the product is, no matter what the question is, they're going to get taken care of, which makes me more comfortable recommending the thing, because I don't want to be tech support for some company that has bad service. I want to know that, hey, I like this thing. I'm recommending it to you. You got it. You're having an issue with it. Don't worry. The company that I recommended to you is going to help you out, and you're not going to feel terrible about the thing that you bought. So there we go. Continuing on to the last bit of the intro, it says, most of the equipment and products I test and review have been purchased by me. I have often thought about saying today's video is sponsored by me and my job, because that is how everything was paid for. But sometimes I will rent or borrow equipment to review. Occasionally, companies will send a product to me for free, and I will always clearly state in the video and description that it was provided to me at no cost. Offering free products in no way guarantees a positive review or even a review at all. Just like with sponsorships, I'm extremely selective about accepting anything for free. So basically, it's kind of a no strings attached situation. If you want to send me something cool, but that doesn't guarantee it's going to be in a video, doesn't guarantee it's going to be positive. I can't imagine myself like making a purposely negative video unless something was a complete ripoff. If I really hated something, I would just ignore it. But just because Polar Pro sends a filter doesn't mean like, well, now I'm going to spend a whole week working on a video about this filter. No, that's stupid anyway, because the filter's $200 or something, and I'm going to put in all that work for No, it's a terrible, terrible deal. I wouldn't do that for $200 in the first place, much less like not even actual cash. So that's kind of the basics of where I'm coming from. Sponsored content's very rare. Just want to explain, anything that is, if something makes it through that filter, that means it's for a reason, and a lot of thought and a lot of effort has been put into that. However, just to make things more clear, right below that, I just put bullet points of like very laid out how my ethics statement works. So it says, all that being said, there are a few additional points I'd like to make just for the sake of clarity. I've made all of this info publicly available to viewers and companies alike so that we're all on the same page. And then it's just several, actually, I don't know how many bullet points, 10, 12 bullet points. And the first one, I kind of put them in order of relevance or importance, priority, I don't know. But the first one says, my content is my own. I create and produce each video based on what I'm excited about, what I think will be relevant, helpful to my audience at the time. Often to anyone who's pretty much got any sort of audience on YouTube has probably been accused of like being a shill or, just secretly sponsored or trying to sell a product when they're totally not. They're just sharing some info or sharing some expertise or whatever. It's just a thing that happens. And I just wanted to be clear that everything I make is mine. It doesn't belong to anyone else. It's like I'm making the videos I'm excited about with stuff that I want to share because I think it's going to be helpful to the people who want to watch that. And it has nothing to do with what any outside force. The closest thing to an outside influence would be Heather, because sometimes I'll say like, should I make this video or this video? Or, I don't know what to make. And she'll say, what about blah, blah, blah. But that's fine. That's fine. That's very different than being influenced by, some big corporation or something. But that's the closest thing to an outside influence that exists on my channel. And anything that she has suggested that I've implemented has only made the videos in the channel better, so I trust it. The second bullet point says, my reviews are always objective and my opinions are always my own. Like I said, if I'm reviewing something, the fact that I have made a video, edited a video, and uploaded a video probably means I don't hate the thing. Because if it was a total piece of garbage, I would just not spend the time on it. So there's kind of like this, the fact that the review exists means it's going to be positive. But what that means is if you go and look at all the reviews, it's easy to feel like, well, he only ever gives out positive reviews, when really it's like, well, I only actually spend the time making a review on something I'm excited about. And that's important because I don't want anyone to think that, here a company just provided me with a thing to say, or I know that people really like this thing, so I want to review it positively just to, I don't know, get clicks, I guess. Whatever the reason would be, anything I'm talking about is my decision to talk about it. It's objective. There's personal biases that we all have. Of course, if I were reviewing a Windows computer for some reason, I'm probably honestly not going to like it as much as my MacBook because I'm biased towards the ecosystem and the operating systems that I'm familiar with. And so that kind of stuff, if we just heard a message recorded with the Zoom L8, if I were to review that, I would try to be as objective as possible with how it works. And I've used lots of Zoom products in the past, but I also know that my opinion is going to be very tainted by the Rodecaster because I like it so much, and it's going to be hard for me not to just directly to compare it. And if it doesn't stack up in some places, it's going to. There's just biases that exist, but I do my best to be as objective as possible. It's like being on a jury where, I don't know, if the person on trial is, I don't know, a chef, and you're like, I don't know, maybe the chef murdered someone with a cake or something, and you're a potential juror, and you're like, but my uncle was a chef. And then the lawyer will say, okay, do you think you can still be impartial? And you're like, yeah, it's not really related other than that I am familiar with a different chef. So what a weird tangent that was. But anyway, point is, try to keep those objective. I want everyone to know that. The third bullet point, the one after that, is very important. And this is one that will definitely drive away many companies who want to work with me as a sponsor. And it says, I do not submit previews of videos to anyone for approval or revisions. That's client work. If you're doing a promotional piece or corporate, project for a client, they hire you. Usually in the contract, it will say a certain number of revisions. You finish it up, you send it to them. They say, okay, here's this. Can you change this, add this, do this? Okay, cool, do that. You send it back to them. Maybe you do 2 rounds of revisions or something, and then you send it to them. You're creating the product for them. So yes, they need to get the thing that they actually paid for. They're paying you. We need this great corporate promo. You send them a version. If it doesn't meet exactly what their needs are, they're going to ask for revisions. You make the revisions. That's just part of that process. But for me, on the stuff that I'm choosing to make on my own, No, I don't want to have to send that to someone and then they look at it and they say, okay, but could you mention this feature, or you forgot to talk about this service, or what about, maybe put that part at the beginning and this part at the end. No, because at that point now I am doing client work, which isn't a bad thing, but then I'm posting it on my channel, and that already, the fact that somebody else who's not my wife has gotten in and said, change it, make it this way, do this thing, do that thing, means that it's not mine. And that already knocks down the level of authenticity that's there. And I know that that's a hard thing for a lot of companies. They're spending money on an ad budget. They're going to want to see the thing that they have invested in before it goes out to the world. And that makes sense. But if that's their role, we're just not going to be a good fit to work together, because ultimately, are you hiring me to make a commercial for you, or are you wanting to do sponsored content because you like what I do? And so you want me to just do things my own way because you trust that. Here's a great example, and I'll name names. We'll just go into it because this is a positive thing, I think. The very first financial investment that I made for my YouTube channel was Artlist. My Artlist music subscription. Literally, I don't know what the dates are, but it was signing up for YouTube channel, and within 2 weeks, I had seen a video that talked about Artlist, and I was like, oh, it looks so much easier, and it's relatively affordable. It's a couple $100s a year. Signed up for it, and that was a big deal to invest money in this thing that I was going to start working on, this channel. And I've used Artlist ever since. I also use Epidemic Sound too, because they're just different libraries of royalty-free music. But Artlist does have the best licensing because you just download their music and use it wherever, forever, whether or not you have a current account. It's the easiest thing, especially for client work. It's great. Artlist was also the first one. They reached out a year ago and, do you want to be part of our affiliate program? Which I was like, sure. People, this sounds like I'm pitching a link, but people could use my affiliate link and get 2 extra months of Artlist. And then I get, I think it's $20 every time somebody signs up. And that's been great for me. It makes sense. It's a thing I actually use. I'm totally cool with that. Then recently Artlist reached out and wanted to do a sponsored video. And they kind of had a couple ideas of, this is sort of maybe what you can make a video about. They're sort of trying to give me helpful hints. And I really spent a lot of time thinking about this because it's really easy to say no to this shady company that doesn't seem like they actually exist. I can totally say no to them. Or the one that just sends you a form letter that they don't even mention your name in it. But this is, a company and people that I've talked to for a long time and used for a long time, and I actually really like, and it would be a natural good fit on my channel. And it was now a thing where it was but is it the right thing to do right now? And I kind of wanted to do it, but there was something in my gut that was telling me no. And it's not because they were doing anything wrong. And so I said, okay. It was literally I think maybe 2 days after I finished this ethics statement, I got that email, and I told the person who emailed me, okay, I'm very selective about sponsored content. I just finished this ethics statement. Maybe take the time to go check it out. I know that it doesn't seem very business friendly because it's so much of what I won't do, but read that. Let me know what you think. And then, let me know what you think. And my thought was that's obviously going to turn them off and make them not want to work with me. The next day I got an email that was I read that. I think this only makes you more authentic and makes us want to work with you more, which is not what I expected at all. So to me, that right there was proof of concept for the ethics statement, because a company that wouldn't be a good fit would just leave at that point. But a company that could be a good partnership would understand where I'm coming from and go, yes, we want to be a part of that. Which includes making a video, them paying me to make a video that they don't get to see or approve before sending it out. And we'll kind of get to this later, but they could send me some bullet points of here's stuff you could include, but it doesn't even mean that I would include that in the video. And I just send it out because they like the way that I make my videos and that I share my stuff. They want to be a part of that. They want to help support that. And then, drive stuff to their channel. So that kind of blew me away, and I didn't really know how to respond to it. And I was still I was still feeling weird about doing something sponsored. It wasn't even Artlist related because that was like the absolute perfect situation to do a sponsored video. But something in my gut was just like, now's like not the right time. I don't know. There was just something that I didn't feel right about doing it. But I was working on a video where I just totally by coincidence happened to be mentioning something about Artlist. And it was a video using a technique that I had learned originally from the Artlist YouTube channel, because they have like a production techniques channel. And so I mentioned that in the video, like, hey, was not a sponsored thing, but I was like, I got this from this channel. I like Artlist. You know, there's an affiliate link down below, yada, yada. It's not sponsored. It was just a thing that would have happened anyway. And so what I told them was, this is the video I'm working on. This isn't sponsored. Like, this is just a normal one of my videos. I'm sure it will drive a bit of affiliate revenue because that's what they do. But this is how I would create a sponsored video. So even though you have already agreed to my ethics statement guidelines, just because I want us to be on the same page, when this video comes out, I'll send it to you. Take a look at it. If you like the way that it is, then we can revisit the conversation about doing something sponsored, because this is what a sponsored video would feel like, would be like. This is about how much, airtime, I guess, quote unquote, Artlist would get in it. So, if you like that, great. If you don't like that, that's fine too. So that video is actually just about to come out this week. So we'll see what they say about that. But I think that was a good way to do it. I was like, here's what I do anyway. This is what something would look like if you chose to sponsor it. If you like that, we're a good fit. If you don't like that, there's tons of other people who would love sponsorships too. And the fact that they were so respectful of my ethics statement and it made me more comfortable with the idea of working with them in the future. And that is really what you want to do, because you don't want to just take some money from some random company, do a sponsorship, and they leave, but building an actual partnership that kind of, I don't want to say benefits, but does benefit everybody involved. So the audience is getting info that's actually relevant and helpful. I'm getting support for the thing that I'm making, and the company is getting, their marketing and their advertising taken care of. That's kind of ideal. Wow, that was a long dissection of that bullet point. But that's kind of what came from the idea of not submitting previews of videos to anyone for approval or revisions. That's going to drive away a lot of potential sponsors, but I think it's a very important one. Same with the next point, which says, I have full control over my content calendar. No one else has any say in deciding when I post a video. I'm happy to work collaboratively when possible for scheduling, but no outside party can pay or otherwise influence me in return for scheduling priority. Sometimes if you work with someone, they will say, yeah, please post this video on this date, or we're releasing a product, so make sure this video comes out on this date. I have my own ideas of stuff I want to release. Typically, I don't know if this is apparent to anyone, but I tend to alternate between audio and video related videos. So one week I might do one that's like video production. The next week will be audio. The next week will be video, because I think audio and video go together very well. And that's kind of like bouncing back and forth, helping build up both those skill sets within my audience at the same time. I don't know if that's an effective strategy or not, but that's just what I've been doing. But if I'm really excited for this audio related video that's coming out, and now somebody wants to show up and say, no, do our, camera product review video. Well, no, because I was already planning to do this. I've already worked on it. I've already scheduled it. Like I've already done that. Your thing will pop up when it fits into my content schedule. And sometimes it makes, I did a not sponsored video for Canon Price Watch last fall, which is just an awesome website. I've bought all kinds of gear from them and recommended to my students. It's just, if you're interested in any Canon gear, they track all the prices, but they also have this street pricing program, which is tough to explain, and it almost sounds shady at first, but it's not at all. And you can get newer gear for really like significant discounts from actual Canon dealers, like real stores that you probably would order from anyway. So I wanted to make a video about that to help people save some money. But I let them know that I was making a video about it, just sort of as a courtesy, I guess. I didn't have to. I just sort of felt like that was the right thing to do. And they were super excited about it. And they were like, oh, we'll do a post on our website when you release it, when do you think you'll release it? And I said, well, it'll be, next Thursday. And they said, okay. And then that kind of cemented it into the calendar for me, as that video needs to go up on Thursday. If something else comes up and I wanted to switch it, I don't want to, because now somebody else is planning their schedule around my schedule. But that was just a collaborative, like, courtesy thing. That wasn't anything I was being forced to do. And that wasn't even a sponsored video at all. But anyway, I choose to post what I post when I post it. Next point says, just because a product is provided to me at no cost does not mean I will review it or feature it in a video. Sort of mentioned that up above, but I wanted to be even clearer here, because so many times, fortunately, I tend to say no when people offer free stuff, but I know lots of people who say yes to everything. And there's so many times where some company will send, some $50 item to somebody for free and then bug them for the next 6 weeks. Where's the video? Where's the video? Where's the video? I don't want to get involved in any of that, so I just be clear with that. In a similar vein, this is a point that I saw on Kevin the Basic Filmmaker's channel, or his ethics statement, that says, I never work with Amazon sellers, only directly with trusted companies. I forget how he phrased his, but essentially, I don't work with Amazon sellers. Not because there's anything inherently wrong with them, but because you're not working with... There's nothing wrong with... I use Amazon links all the time, but there's a very big difference between buying something from Canon on Amazon versus like a reseller, someone who buys products and then sets up their own Amazon shop and then sells them. The service, the quality, it's so hit or miss. It's not something I would feel comfortable endorsing at all. So I just don't work with Amazon sellers ever. And typically those are the emails that you'll get in your inbox that just say like, hi, channel name, I really enjoy video on channel and we are looking to collaborate. It's just like they must send that out to 800 people a day or something. So I just stay away from that entirely. Typically those requests just get deleted. I don't even respond to them because they're not, it's just shady and not really good for anybody. But if you start getting those, you'll be able to start spotting those videos and those reviews pretty quickly. And sometimes it can make you sad when you see people who probably don't need to be taking on those partnerships, taking them on, and you just feel a little like sad, I guess. The next point says, I appreciate when companies offer information on their products and service, but I will only include what I think is relevant and necessary. So if I were doing a sponsored video and a company wanted to provide all the info about it, that's awesome. Like, I would totally love to have all the correct info from the horse's mouth. But sometimes, companies really like to market their products and they include features that either like aren't relevant to me, or maybe I don't even think are all that interesting in general. And I might not want to include that in the video. So I might want to hit these big points here that I think are relevant, but then this other little thing that I don't really care about, and maybe I don't think anyone else is going to care about, especially enough to watch a video on, I might just leave that out or just ignore it or whatever. Essentially, it's not that I would try to not be thorough, but it just means just because you provided me with this PDF or this product information thing or whatever doesn't mean that every word of that is going to find its way into the video, just the stuff that is relevant and necessary. But the next point elaborates on that and does say, I will work to seek answers for anything about a product or service that I don't fully understand. So I'm trying to show that there is a little give and take here. You can't necessarily tell me what to say, and I'm not going to necessarily include everything that you throw at me to say, but I do want to do your product or your service justice if we're working together. And if something is unclear to me or something doesn't seem to be working right, I will take the proactive approach to figure that out, and I will go to you to ask the questions so I get the clarity from the source and I can be as accurate as possible for everybody. It also, the next point says, while it usually makes sense to include certain links in video descriptions or social media posts, I retain full control over what is shared on my accounts across all platforms. This one's sort of funny, but I don't have like huge followings on Twitter or Instagram or anything. But a lot of times sponsored content does include, okay, here's the video, but you also need to do, 3 Instagram posts over the course of a week plus 5 stories or whatever. Or they might just say like, there needs to be this link, put this link at the very top of the description so it shows up first, and put this link here. And sometimes these agreements this maybe you can understand why I say no to most of them, but sometimes they can be very controlling over how you do everything. And that's just like, literally, I have an Instagram where I share stuff I'm excited about. Usually it's something to do with the video I just released, or like I just recently took a picture of that comet that's been visible, and I put that because I was like, this is cool. It's a comet. I took a picture in my backyard. Check it out. But that's a pretty authentic use of social media, much less so than, hey guys, it's Tuesday morning. Look at this product from company. Wow, product is great. And then strategically 2 days later, oh, did you know product has feature? Wow, check out feature of product. Here's link right here. Like, I might organically do stuff like that on my own. Like the number of Roadcasters I've sold for Rode is absurd, but that's all because it's a great friggin' tool that I love, and I'm happy to recommend it because I like it and I use it a lot, and it meets the needs of a lot of different people. So organically those things will happen, and that's kind of going back to Artlist, where it's like, yes, you could try to control every aspect of this sponsored video, or you could recognize that the reason you're even talking to me in the first place is because you must like what I do, and if that's the case, just trust me to do what I do, and that's going to be good for everybody. Otherwise, if that's not the case, what they're essentially doing is just trying to hijack your reach and your audience, and they don't care about you, they just care about the eyeballs that are on you, and that's shady. Not a thing I'm interested in. The next point says, I am more than happy to let others share my videos as long as the post links directly to the original video uploaded to my YouTube channel. That's just a thing to make sure that if I upload a video review on something and the company wants to share it, that's awesome. Just, put the link to my channel. So if someone clicks on it, it's going to go to my channel. Don't download the video and re-upload it to their own channel or to like their proprietary hosting platform or something. Like, my videos stay on my channel. Beyond that, they can be posted or shared anywhere. I think that's pretty fair. The second to last point says, I do not guarantee any number of views or any amount of audience engagement. While I want every video to do well, there are too many variables beyond my control for me to make any claims regarding potential viewership. And it's crazy because I don't know how you could think it would happen authentically, but there are sponsorship agreements that say this sponsored content must get this many views in this amount of time. Typically, those are for people with larger audiences, and it might say get 100,000 views in the first week or something. I have no idea. I mean, I can pretty safely say at this point that I could pretty easily guarantee 100 views in the first day, just because that's the point where the channel is at. I've been consistently able to break the 1,000 views in a day threshold lately, which is great, because it used to be like maybe I could do 100 in a week, and so 1,000 in a day is awesome, but it doesn't keep going like 1,000 every day. It's usually kind of plateaus, and sometimes depending on the video, it might continue to pop and take off and go further. But I wouldn't want to guarantee that. I guarantee I'm going to post this thing and it's going to get this much views in this amount of time, because I have no idea. Sometimes a video I'm excited about does terribly, and then YouTube tells you, it's like, this video is performing worse than all the other ones, and all these red arrows show up. And other times a video that you're like, I hardly spent any time on this at all, and it was just for funsies, that thing takes off and becomes like one of the most popular videos on your channels. There's too many variables to figure out to put that pressure on yourself. So I don't want to guarantee any views. I want it to do well. If it doesn't get a lot, then it just doesn't get a lot. But even if it doesn't, you post something and it doesn't get a lot of traction, the company then still has access to it. Again, they can post it and share it across all their social media as long as it links back to me. And that's cool, because now I've just made, in theory, I would have made a promotional piece for them, and they can definitely get their money back from that, because that's a valuable thing to have. And then the last point is a very, it's based on a personal pet peeve, but it's important to me. The very last point of the mission statement, or the ethics statement, says, finally, and this may seem a bit odd, I do not participate in embargo, quote-unquote, wave releases. Sometimes new products are sent to creators in advance to be tested so that a video can be ready as soon as the product is publicly released or announced. Not only do I find these lacking in authenticity, they annoy me. I don't expect anyone to watch something that I wouldn't want to watch myself. That's a very personal thing. I don't think most people would put that in their mission statement, but I get annoyed when a new thing comes out and I go to my YouTube subscription feed and there are 20 videos all about that same thing. And it's, it's good for those creators because they're building relationships with the company. Even if it's not a sponsored thing, the company just sends them, hey, here's a secret version of new thing we're working on, new camera or whatever. Use it, whatever. And then as soon as we announce it or it's available, you can post your video on midnight of that day and you just sort of see like the flood of videos coming in. I don't watch any of those. And I've had enough conversations with other people just as YouTube viewers and consumers that they don't watch them either because it's just like, one, there's too many and it becomes overwhelming. And then two, they don't seem authentic, which might not be fair because if a new camera comes out and the company sends it 2 weeks or a month or whatever in advance and the person can use it for that time and then make their video, it's not really that different than had they got it after the fact and used it for several weeks and made a video about it. But there's just something that just doesn't, it just doesn't seem like you're going to get the most thorough or the most objective or the most authentic review of something when it's done under those circumstances. And I know it's also a thing that's good for channels. There's this, if you're able to showcase a very sought after popular product release immediately when it comes out, people are going to watch that. If you ever see there's, DJI will hold a press event where they're like, here's our new drone. And then as soon as that is over, like if that ends at 11 a.m., at 11 a.m. and 11:01 and 11:10, you'll just see the flood of those embargo releases coming out. And it's crazy because people see the release. Oh, look at this new drone came out. And then they go to YouTube and now, boom, here's all the info you want about it. People are really into it. They're going to just start watching those videos and consuming as much as they can of that. So it's a great way to get eyeballs on your channel. I just don't like it. And it's gotten to the point where I don't, even from creators and channels who I love, I just ignore those videos entirely because I would much rather see the thing which is way less sexy and exciting, but like, here's my camera I've been using for a long time and it's been out for a year, it's been out for months or whatever. That's the thing I'm more interested in. I would probably even be more likely to buy that piece of equipment because it's the thing that the person has actually relied on for a long time. And that speaks more to me than the thing someone rushed to get out just because a press release came out. So those are the bullet points of my ethics statement. And then I did a little conclusion at the bottom that says, thank you for taking the time to read and understand my ethics statement. This probably doesn't cover every possible scenario under the sun, but it should give you a pretty solid idea of how highly I value the integrity behind what I do and the relationship I've built with my audience community. As always, if you have any questions, reach out to me via my email address. And that's just at enthusiasmproject.com/ethics. You can check it out. Feel free to borrow and adjust it to suit your needs. I'm all for more people being more transparent about how they approach what they do. Obviously, something like this would also apply easily to a podcast or even a blog, anything that you're creating, especially to an online audience, making it clear and available to everybody, your audience, your potential partners, and you is key. I also, a while ago, talked about developing a media kit, and I could go into that. My voice cracked. I could go into that in a future episode, but I didn't put the whole ethics statement in the media kit because it just felt a little too like blowhardy. But there is a page I've had about video sponsorships, and I've been so like, I love the media kit because it's a great little showcase of where my channel is at right now. But it's so strange to have because I'm proud of it. I think it looks great, and I think it's easy for someone to look through it and decide, hey, we want to work with this person. But then my default response is, no, I don't want to work with anybody. And so it's like, why do you even have this thing? And it's just again, to be transparent about these things. And so the second to last page is all about video sponsorships, which has been there for a while, but I have a little paragraph that explains how important authenticity is. I give some ideas of how like we might work together, but I added at the bottom a little note that says, please note that I'm extremely selective with partnerships. And at the very top, I put a thing that says, take a moment to read my ethics statement, and it is linked to the website. So that's just making sure people can find this stuff. And as I mentioned when I was talking to Artlist, and I've done this with a few other people as well, in the meantime, like just pointing them there and just saying, hey, check this out. Because I want them to be aware of that. I don't want someone to say, yeah, let's work together. Here's an agreement that says we get 2 revisions of the video. No, like clearly right here, I'm not someone who's going to do revisions. So I want us to be on the same page. But even more importantly, I think just reading through that gives everyone an idea of where you're coming from. And so they sort of understand this is how he approaches things and how he does things and why those things are the way that they are. And that to me is very important. And when someone sees something on my channel or hears something in a podcast, they can understand why it is that way and why I'm doing it. And it just makes me, I don't know, the amount of relief I have felt since developing this and putting it out there just to be available to everyone is pretty big. And I would really just urge everybody to think about developing your own version of an ethics statement if you're somebody who puts stuff out there for an online audience. Whew, I am almost out of breath now. But that's a great time to not take a break, because I'm just going to dive into Gear of the Week. And I was thinking, because I always try to think, this is a not sponsored segment, by the way. I always try to think what is something I'm really excited about. And I don't want it to just be like, here's the thing Tom says you need to spend money on this week, because I don't want that. Like, I need to do a whole video about advocating, or a podcast about like financial responsibility and equipment. It's not a bad idea. But I just like to think about, what is something I use constantly that I'm really enjoying and that I think other people would benefit from. And I try to balance that out the same way I do audio releases and video releases, video-related videos, audio-related videos. I try to balance it out between like, here's something that's more expensive, here's something that's less expensive. And this week is that perfect match of not expensive and really great. And maybe you've already noticed some of the difference, but it is the Rode WS2. Which sounds fancy, but it is just a piece of foam that goes over your microphone. It's a Rode branded windscreen that fits the Rode Pod mic, which you might know is my microphone of choice for podcasts and stuff. And there's no specific podcast windscreen. I don't know which microphone this windscreen was supposed to be for, but it fits the pod mic perfectly. And they cost about $20 each. So I have 2 pod mics. I just got 2 of these windscreens, and they work great. I apologize if you hear, I'm going to turn the volume down for a second. I'm going to take the windscreen off. And now this is my voice without the windscreen. It might not sound different, but a lot of the like Peter Pepper picked up those plosives, which if you're listening to this in earbuds, I am just sorry. The pod mic sounds really great if you're speaking directly into the front of it like I am right now. But it then does pick up a lot of those plosives in your breath. So to avoid that, I often speak across the front of it, which is what I'm doing right now. And it does help get rid of that, but it also doesn't sound as perfect as it could. And then the whole time I'm talking, I'm constantly being aware of of how I'm breathing, and it can be a little distracting. There is a built-in wind filter in the pod mic, but having this external one, I'm going to put it back on the mic right now. There we go. It's back on the mic. So you can hear, it's almost like, as everybody's walking around wearing their masks over their faces when they're out in public now, and you talk with your mask, it definitely, changes the way that your voice sounds. So this does sort of cut down some of those high frequencies, which for someone who has a nasally voice like me isn't really much of a problem. But it does change the mic sound. But the biggest difference is now I can speak, as I've been doing this whole episode, directly into the front of the microphone, getting the best sound, but not Peter Pepper, not having to deal with any of those crazy plosives. It just helps make everything sound so much better. So if you're using the pod mic, I cannot recommend this windscreen enough. I'll put a link in the show notes, but it's the Rode WS2. Usually costs about $20. The only negative about it is that I don't think it looks as good as just the bare pod mic, because I really like the visual style of the pod mic, which sounds like a stupid thing to say about a microphone, because microphones are all about audio quality, right? But if you're somebody who does video podcasts or uses these for live streams, the visuals, the visuals become important. And when you have this windscreen on your microphone, the grill portion, like the front of the microphone, is just a big poofy black windscreen. And if it's like in front of your face, it can kind of cover up your face. So like last night, Heather and I were doing a live stream on her channel for our podcast that we're working on together called The Couples Table. And I made sure to take off the windscreens before that, which probably did reduce the audio quality a bit. But visually, it looked a lot better on the live stream. But then as soon as I was going to do this audio podcast today, I made sure to put the windscreen back on because it's going to sound so much better and it makes the microphone so much easier to use because you don't have to focus so much on, you know, having perfect mic technique to get good results. So totally recommend it. If you're not using the pod mic and you're not using a windscreen, whatever mic you're using, I would recommend finding a windscreen for it. I have found that you can obviously just go to like Amazon or something, type in your microphone, type in windscreen. If you don't know the exact model number, I have found that the most effective thing to do is actually go to B&H Photo, look up your microphone, and then click on accessories, and they'll usually right away have windscreens or, you know, the most relevant accessories. And then from there, you can take it and like even, not that you have to buy it from B&H, but you can take that model, that brand and that model and look at it on Amazon or wherever. But I have found that's a great way to make sure whatever you're getting is the exact one, the right model for the thing that you need. So that's my little pro tip of the day and my gear of the week. Otherwise, thanks again to Keng of the World for an audio message. If you want to leave a message to be included in a future episode, I'd love to hear your thoughts about ethics and ethics statements and whether you're a creator or a consumer. How do you feel about that? What do you wish there were more of or less of? Or do you have any advice or questions? Any of that kind of stuff that we've talked about today, I'd love to hear your input, and we can have it be included in next week's episode. As always, I am at SoDarnTom on Instagram and Twitter, and of course, youtube.com/The Enthusiasm Project. And those are all the places you can find me. So thanks for spending your hour with me. I look forward to seeing you again next week.